get started. Welcome everyone to the Ohio Statewide Family Engagement Leadership Summit. We're glad that you could join us this day of professional learning meant to take family, school, community partnership to the next level. My name is Becky Barenbaum, and I will be this session's moderator. This session is session 9, Family Engagement is Family Empowerment in Early Childhood. And if you have any questions, concerns, or technical issues, please message me privately in the chat. To ensure that all get the most out of today, we ask that all participants turn off their webcams and microphones. If you have any questions for the presenter, please use the chat feature and I will pass them along at the appropriate time. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Be sure to use the hashtag Breakthrough22 to share your thoughts. So without further ado, I will allow Annalisa to introduce herself.
Hello, welcome everybody. I hope you enjoyed the keynote as much as I did. Definitely was an invigorating way to start the day. My name is Annalisa Johnson. I'm the principal at the A. Sophie Rogers School for Early Learning at The Ohio State University College of Education and Human Ecology. So we are located adjacent to the Columbus campus, very much a part of the college, and we serve about 100 children in our program. We used to be right on campus. If you're a Buckeye, we used to be right by the stadium in Kimball Hall, and we moved to a new location in 2007. So we are in the Wyland Park neighborhood, right on the corner of Summit and 7th. And I have always been very interested in community and family involvement with our families and with the Wyland Park and Columbus community all together. So I think an entire conference on family engagement really fits well. I assume if you're on here, you work with children ages birth to 5 and their families. We've always done family engagement really well in early childhood. I think some of our K-12 friends and even higher education can learn from us and how we engage families and become a part of the community. I think from us, folks can learn about how we can trust families and that they want what's best for their children, and they need to have the right resources at the right time. And that's what we've really worked on here in our community and beyond. So we really think about family engagement as family empowerment. It's an exciting time having a new little person in your home that you have all the responsibility for, and we want families to be enthusiastic and really know what resources they have for their little one. A little bit about us then. We are an early childhood program affiliated with the university. There are 2 others as well, but we're a part of the College of Education and Human Ecology. So in addition to our school, there is Schoenbaum Family Center community programs that really helps us to link to the surrounding area of our school. And then on the 2nd floor of our program is the Crane Center for Early Childhood Research and Policy. So we can engage with policymakers and research staff and faculty at the university to really create that triangle of people who are working in the field, informing practice, informing research, researchers informing our practice, trying new things here, looking at data and thinking what more, how else, what differently we can do to really best serve children and families. We are excited always to be a part of a family's life, and we have become pretty skilled at looking at where a child is and where a child comes from and where the family is when they join our program, and meeting that family right where they're at. So I think that's another overall advantage of early childhood. A lot of times historically in education, certainly in K-12, certainly when I was young, there was a standard, and if you weren't at that standard in 2nd grade and 5th grade and 8th grade, it was about the deficit model. What can we do to get that child and that family to where they need to be? We really think of family engagement and working with young children as a strength-based model. So everybody comes to us with a lot of knowledge, a lot of that they want to give and be a part of a community of learners. And so we really embrace that and build from there. With our school, though, we do have a mixed income population. So as you heard in the keynote, oftentimes you can come across educational settings that are very homogeneous, or lean to one end in terms of we've always done things this way, feel that we have to change constantly because we have such a diverse body of student learners and student families. So we work really hard at a lot of different funding pathways to support many different families to have access to a high quality education. That's not always easy in our state and in others. There's certainly a lot of tricks of the trade to come by grants, partnerships, and other areas that can really support children in attending. Since we're funded early childhood historically, particularly birth to 3, is funded very differently from K to 12. So within that mixed income model, we really pay attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. It's something we're always studying. It's something we try to highlight in our work and how we work with young children and families, and try to continue to study to learn more and be better in that realm. This morning, Dr. Siddons also mentioned the Ohio's emphasis on literacy and literacy learning. We look at high quality language and literacy programming and implementation. If you're working with children birth to 5, you always have to throw that language in there. It's our learning throughout our lives is language and literacy, but particularly in birth to 5, language and talking with children and providing a language rich environment is just as important as the hard and fast literacy rules for children. We of course use tiered instructional support for diverse learners. We're going to talk about family engagement and partnership, community partnerships, not just in the neighborhood that we're in, but we're right next to Ohio State, and we're of course part of that community. So we have a couple different communities that we can lean on and be a part of. And then a part of our important work here is training the next sort of cohort of educators and folks working with young children and families. So to that end, we have lots of student placements in a lot of different fields. So not just student teaching placements and practicum, but ancillary fields. And we'll talk about that as we go on, how we have really embraced that and find that as a way to better meet families' needs. So moving along, we talked about that family engagement is something that historically early childhood has done pretty well relative to the rest of maybe our age cohorts, that because we have historically a lot of interaction with families, they have to come in and drop off their child and pick them up at the end of the day. There's almost daily communication, and that right there sets us apart from a lot of our peers who don't have that daily interaction with families or can't have those quick meet and greet that may diffuse situations or bring a parent more along in feeling the classroom environment and what the school is like. So we have always met families where they're at, but I think a problem in my field is that early childhood sort of has taken on trying to be everything to everyone. I think the pandemic sort of laid bare that maybe early childhood teachers aren't mental health experts. Maybe they aren't the ones who should be advising you on pediatrics. Maybe they aren't the ones who should be talking about lead screenings. But a lot of times, grant funding and other sort of institutions have known that children are here. So make sure we put this information out to families. And I think Dr. Khalifa's presentation really spoke to that in terms of what do families want? What do they need? What do they think they want? Do they want information about childhood diabetes? Do they want information about lead screenings? Or do they want to know about their child's social development? So really not trying to be everything to everyone all of the time, but really be high quality educators and find the right resources for the right families at the right time. And it's really exciting too. It's really unique that we have this opportunity that just as a family is starting out, just as parenting is new to them, that we can come in and show how important they are in their child's education, that they are in fact the most important part in their child's education, that education isn't something that their child goes off and does and comes back, absorbs, that really it is a piece of their child's learning and growing. And we're so honored to be a part of that. I would say too, if I had given this presentation 5 years ago, there might have been a lot more I would have said about family engagement in terms of being face-to-face and being in the school. The pandemic has really opened up some things I think us in early childhood and across the school wouldn't have considered in terms of family engagement, family involvement. Using Zoom, using Teams, using face-to-face meetings, while it might not be for everyone, it is a tool that traditionally we hadn't used a lot, that we are finding a lot of families respond to. I know myself as a parent, to be able to click on to Zoom, have a parent-teacher conference, and click back off, it saves me an hour. It saves me driving in traffic. It saves me the frustration of being a little bit late or anything else and going into that meeting feeling a certain way. So really thinking about these options and the resources and the networks that have come. We have to take the silver linings of the pandemic when we can. So that is one I would say we're grateful for. Feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat. We'll kind of go through what we can this morning, and hopefully at the end have a lot of time to just talk together, get ideas from each other, and learn more about what family engagement is happening out there in the early childhood realm. So as we're talking, please put your items or questions or introductions in the chat. I'd love to hear that. So when we look at engagement, we really look at empowering families, and just like children, looking at families like what in a strength-based model, what families bring to your program, what they bring to the child, what they bring to the classroom every day. We're pretty traditional in that although we have many funding streams, we don't have busing, we don't have other transportation. So families are arriving to our program and they're bringing their children back to the classroom and picking them up at the end of the day. So we really gain a lot. We have an enrollment meeting with the teacher upon enrollment to really learn what is important to families, why they're enrolling, what are goals for their children, so that we can tailor our goals accordingly as well. We have the goals that the state of Ohio in our early childhood program has set for children, but we really want to know what families have in mind and set as goals for their child while they're here. We set families up for success by learning what's important to them. So not only what's important to them, but when. So if you have a whole presentation or you do a whole spiel on the importance of sleeping on your back, an infant sleeping on its back, and the importance of safe sleep, if your child's 2 at that point, that doesn't really matter to you then, or that ship has sailed, that might not be an engaging parent engagement session for them. What we have learned now is having that catalog of activities that can be available then on Zoom later, so that maybe you had a 2-year-old, but now you had another baby, and now you were wondering more about safe sleep and sleeping on your back. To be able to reference that and have a pretty robust website that families could access. We can do that through our own website, but certainly there are a lot of resources online so that you identify not only what's important to families, but when. And that you're available when families actively seek that resource, and that the resource is there and available, that it's not something that they have to wait in line for, and whether it is paper, a quick conversation, or a video link, something that we can provide them right then and there, even if you're looking at maybe more a longer term referral. It's not only when a family seeks something, it's really when they need it that you sort of want to strike when the iron is hot. Certainly in our own program with children and with each other, we model productive relationships and partnerships. So our team has the same goals, the same ideals, is on the same page with family engagement, education, how the community looks and feels in our schools, so that when families walk in and out, they're seeing that camaraderie, they're seeing the collegiality, and there is that expectation and knowledge that people are going to be treated with respect in the building. A big part of that is simply active listening. That's a skill probably a lot of us learned in our education or just through our work, that when you're problem solving or sharing with each other on your team or with families, that you're listening, that you're repeating back what the person is saying, because you might be going one direction with what they're saying, thinking it has to do with an incident that happened yesterday, but really it's more a systemic problem, something that they want to solve. So we always assume the best too, and give grace to families and each other in terms of problem solving. It's been a rough couple of years, 2.5 years in a pandemic. I had been in early childhood long before this, since 1997. And I certainly was faced with parents and teachers saying to me, what are we going to do, or how are we going to do this? And to be comfortable with saying, I don't know right now, that was okay. But we're really coming through now with everything we've learned during that time, and coming back, I think, even stronger. We'll talk a little bit more later about how our program has invested in resources available for families. Again, we really can't and shouldn't be everything to everyone. So giving somebody a flyer about COVID-19 or giving somebody a pamphlet about safe sleep, certainly we can start that ball rolling, but there are people who are trained in those fields, trained to really provide expert information, coaching, that we want to make sure our families have access to, and we're giving them the right information at the right time, so that also our educators are down at the level of children, working with them, because that's their role. So how can we do the graceful handoff so that families get what they need and hear the support that they can get from our surrounding community, and not just from the two people that are in the classroom. We can certainly, I think, encourage our community then to take the resources to where the children are at. That instead of having Head Start programs and early childhood programs, church-based programs, and then saying, here's a pamphlet about these screenings, here's a flyer about this opportunity, that those things should come to those programs. If you want to get investment in the library should be coming into schools, giving library cards, doing story times, so that families can see how much their children love them, can experience it themselves, and that is the graceful introduction then to using the library in the community. And that things aren't simply follow-up screenings or one-offs. I think of a push years ago in the Columbus community. A local organization was doing ASQ and ASQ screenings like in the grocery store. So ASQ is Ages and Stages questionnaire, sort of what you get in a pediatrician's office. And they should be getting the ASQ and ASQSE in the pediatrician's office. And they should have a pediatrician there to talk about any developmental concerns. Doing a screening in the grocery store and saying, you can follow up with this to the parent, isn't really that convergence of resources that we want to see. That is sort of could be a ticket to nowhere. Could be a light bulb moment for some families, but I think that experiment and others have shown that really if we want to do a convergence on these resources, the resources need to go where families are at, and they're with us in our early childhood programs. So then supporting families when you make those references, when you say, let's look at a screening through Help Me Grow or through your local school district. That is a complex system. I have been in early childhood for many, many years. I have seen things change. I have thought that I had the process down. No, now you call this number. No, that person's not here anymore. You go here. So you can imagine as a young parent hearing something like, your child might need a follow-up with a vision screening, might need a full eye appointment. Your child, let's talk to Help Me Grow, and then they don't get a call back. That's can be when you say, okay, I tried, that was enough. What we really need to do is hold our resources accountable and then really support families for that follow through, so they don't get discouraged and they're able to take advantage of the resources that are out there. And there's a wealth of them, and we'll talk about that later. And then we always anticipate the barriers. As I said, I have had referral agencies that I know aren't good at calling families back. So anticipating that and telling families, they might not call you back. It's okay to call every single day. We can use my phone. Every day when you drop off, come in here and we'll give a call. We'll be the squeaky wheel. I'd say often for families, transportation is one of the greatest barriers, right? It's a big deal to take off work, make and keep an appointment, and go across town to Children's Hospital for additional testing. So really trying to map that out with the family and ensure that that is not a barrier that precludes them from getting the services they have a right to. And really looking at oftentimes, some of our referral agencies are scheduling months and months out. So how we can keep that on the calendar, support the family. We often have an educator go with to be that support, and also to make sure that nothing gets lost in the shuffle of that referral. Something we often look at in our field, and that I think was touched on this morning by not only the introduction, but the keynote speaker, is the difference between family engagement and education and family involvement. So luckily, we have a lot of family involvement, right? Families are coming in every day. They are talking with teachers, they're talking with their child, they can see the environment. And so that's a lot. That is a wonderful thing that we have in early childhood that many other programs or age groups don't. Education, I think, is what we heard this morning, is a lot of sometimes what perhaps a funder or the state or a community decides is important for families. So I might get notification that I received this funding, so I have to pass out information on lead screenings. I received this funding, I have to pass out a flyer on toothbrushing. So that is sort of sometimes takes the place then of really good and relationally based family engagement, is when the school becomes a sort of, here's something you may or may not want. It's about toothbrushing. So we want to make sure that we're not drowning. I mean, certainly to appease funders, sometimes we make sure that kind of information gets out, but that it is also coupled with really investing discussion sessions that we have heard from our families that they want. So there's the daily family involvement, drop-off, pickup, daily conversations. There is family engagement. Family education, which may come in the form of, here is information about COVID-19. Here is information about monkeypox. It could be serendipitous things that come up in the community. But it doesn't all have to be this didactic format. So when we think about engagement, we think about relationships, resources, and support. And we think of that as a bidirectional relationship, right? So families know their child the best in their home context and in their lives. And we have a lot of expertise about that child in a community of learners. So I don't have 17 other preschoolers in my house, but I had a child in my house all the time, and I had a child who was here with 17 other learners every day. And so that child can be different in those two contexts, and having those discussions and recognizing that. So we really look at family engagement is, how do we balance the informational and the social, the informational and the relational, that there is an advantage of getting young children and their families together. Sometimes that is the most precious thing that I hear back from families, is the lifelong relationships they formed here. You might be a very different family, have a very different family structure, very different beliefs, but you both have a 2-year-old, and then later you both have a 4-year-old. So to be able to bounce ideas, share childcare, learn about the best place to go for breakfasts in the morning and school lunches during the summer, those are the kind of sustainable relationships that we hope to foster and build, not just really didactic or formal referrals to agencies. We like to also look for families to give each other resources too. So I might, in my role, learn a lot from days like today about state resources or websites or pamphlets. But when a family hears from another family about where the best place to buy new school supplies is, or where there are family breakfasts on Sunday at the local church, those are the kind of things that really build a community of learners in our school. So the benefit of the social network when parenting and when raising young children just can't be underestimated. And certainly after the pandemic and even before, sometimes parenting for some can be a really isolating thing. Maybe you're a really young parent. Maybe your other peers don't have children yet. Maybe you're the only one in your family with children this young. They have older children. And so that isolation of feeling like I'm the only one with an 18-month-old who doesn't sleep through the night can really be disheartening, and really think I'm the only one who's ever had this problem. So when we open up times for our families to talk together, when we really build that meeting each other and meeting your child's friends in, they learn about, like, your kid got that, mine's doing that too. And then we also have a lot of facilitation within that, right? So that if folks are talking about 18 months old not sleeping through the night, that we can hear that. We have staff members present at these social functions, so that then we can tailor resources to those families, check back in on them, see how the nighttime sleeping routine is going, and build from there. Because sometimes in some of the early childhood, bumps in the road that come up, if you're not sleeping well, a lot of things aren't going well during the day. So we really take those seriously and try to meet the family where they're at and move on from there. We do embrace our exchanges with families as learning opportunities. So, we think about that in the classroom when there are questions or issues that we need to look over with families. We think about that just the same as we do in our classrooms, that this is an opportunity to learn. So sometimes just new families out of the gate are really concerned about protecting their children, of course, from the outside world. And so some of those things might be parts of being a learning community, that a teacher resigned, that a classroom is moving over here, classroom assignments, that a peer said, you can't come to my birthday party. Those are really concerning things as a young parent. So what we try to do then is embrace that as a learning situation, that is really hard for a parent to encounter. It's really hard for a child to encounter. And we want to make sure that's the case. Maybe it was really hard for a child to hear, you can't come to my birthday party. But also maybe that child's birthday is 11 months away, and that really isn't, that was their placeholder, right? They wanted to say something really powerful to that child. And so they said, you can't come to my birthday party, but what does that really mean? And so I'm having that conversation with parents in terms of the realization that your child is going on and is going to know people that you don't know, is going to be a part of a context that you don't know, all of the culture of the peer culture, the school culture, and how you learn that and how you become a part of it and how it becomes a part of you. Because it's our job to really reflect the families and students that are participating in our school. So I remember that going to the park with my young child and children and adults starting to say hello to her. And I was like, she knows people that I don't know. And that hadn't been the case because she was 4 years old. So recognizing as early childhood educators that it's a big deal that your child, who may be not verbal yet, is going out and experiencing things that you don't know about. So that goes back to that active listening, repeating back statements with families, making sure you're both talking about the same issue, the same concerns, and then really being able to explain it in the context of the school, but also getting back from the parent what they're really concerned about. So if they're really concerned seemingly about the time of breakfast, it sometimes becomes that it's not really that our breakfast time is too short or how it is served. It comes to that you're really struggling in the morning to get the child out the door. And I say that as a person who definitely struggled in getting their child out the door in the morning when they were that age. And so when you can get it back to that and then find resources to help support that issue, sometimes the issue that was initially presented sort of becomes secondary or resolves itself because it was getting out the door that was the problem, not actually that breakfast wasn't served at 11 a.m. What we have done to make sure that we are addressing the correct issues that families bring to us or concerns, because the opportunity then for learning from families certainly increases the opportunity that there will be miscommunications or areas that we're missing or that we're not looking at the right thing. So in addition to daily conversations, check-ins, having administrators as well as ancillary staff there to meet parents in the hallway, say hello, have brief conversations. We also have done some more formal surveys of families at the beginning and end of each year in terms of what kind of family engagement opportunities they would like to see. So of course we talked about the social, that we have had beginning of the year parties, end of the year parties, that we have a family breakfast. We didn't during the pandemic, right? There was a lot of things that were sort of paused, but we're getting back to, so I'm going to talk in the present tense. Family breakfasts in our library, in and out. That was a great social networking place, as well as family story times once a week. So having those really informal times. But when we think about what resources could we help with, we survey families and we send this out via email. But we also then, when we see we haven't gotten a response from some families, we'll wait and during the social times, make sure we have iPads so that all families can participate. And, you know, we've been here since 2007. Over the years, our school's data in terms of what families request that they would like more information on for birth to age 5 is really child development. So, like I said, it might present or somebody might write in that my 3-year-old can't read, when really that's a concern about like when should reading start? When should I expect a child who's birth to 5? What should I look for in terms of language and literacy markers? I really want to be involved in my child's education, and I'm concerned they can't read at 3. So what can we do to make sure that families have a good sense of the markers they should be looking at for language and literacy development? Routines and limit setting is a nice way to say that parents say, my kid will not go to bed at night. My kid won't, I can't get them out the door. I can't get them in the door. They won't take a bath. I can't read with my kid. So we take that and go into really routines and consistency and limit setting and use all of those real world examples as parents ourselves. And from 100 kids every day, we know that sometimes you're like, what? We wash our hands every day. Why is this a huge issue today? And can talk through those things. So routines and limit setting might also be considered guidance and discipline or that kind of support. Families often want information about peer interactions and friendships in our program and beyond. So again, that a neighborhood child is making fun of their stutter, or a neighborhood child said, you can't come to my birthday party, and that devastated my child. So really talking about, again, a little bit of child development, but peer interactions and friendships and what to expect out of this age group. Nutrition might also go up into routine and limit setting because it comes from my child will only eat chicken nuggets. My child only will eat French fries. Every mealtime is unpleasant. There's a lot of, perhaps in all of our work, we say, never say always or never, but oftentimes in these surveys, my child never eats. We always have horrible meal times. So really, we eat family style breakfast, lunch, and we have an afternoon snack here as well. So we know that children can and will sit at meals and have conversations and pass platters of food. So how can we talk about what's appropriate for kids to eat, when to be worried, when to go to your pediatrician if it truly is a nutrition concern, and when it is a 3-year-old being a 3-year-old, like 3-year-olds like to do. And kindergarten readiness, again, when families are concerned about their child's academic learning, sometimes families may think, right, we all remember 5th grade, maybe. You remember 7th grade, you remember homework, you remember worksheets, you remember textbooks, and that's not what early childhood looks like. But if you have that expectation, we can talk about that. And certainly we have teachers who are so skilled at if worksheets are really important to that family, or even the child has an older sibling that's bringing home worksheets, and this child really wants to feel a part of that. Like a little worksheet never hurt anybody. We can have some of those kind of things, as well as having the active learning, the moving around, the small groups, and the project work that really are a hallmark of early childhood programming. So kindergarten readiness often encompasses what should a 4-year-old be doing for a 5-year-old. What are elementary schools looking for when children start kindergarten? And then I think of kindergarten readiness too as readying the family. So it's so much more than a child knowing their ABCs, being able to count to a certain number. Anything that you want to look on the ODE website also has a lot of social, emotional, and soft skill components in there. So I'm really going over those with families. And for us, many families go into Columbus City School District. That's the biggest district in Ohio. So how you navigate that district, how enrollment works, how getting your needs met as a family works there. And I'm excited some of the family engagement specialists from Columbus City Schools have a session later today that really highlights some of the work that district does with their families too. After we determine what's most meaningful to families, what they're interested in, again, we're not assuming what they're interested in. We're not saying this community needs to know more about the importance of enrollment and attendance. Why aren't people coming until 11? They need a session on why regular routines and attendance is important. Instead, we look at what we can change to adjust that first, and we look at what families are saying that they need. So if we see that they're saying they need more transportation or more flexible ways to get their child here, that's something that we can solve. So we're not assuming an interest or a community-based need. We're waiting to hear that from our families. We use surveys, meetings, voting. Sometimes a serendipitous event leads to an interest in families or a need or a resource that they keep asking for. Some of the recent school shootings have led families to really reach out to us about school safety. What are you doing? How can I talk to my child about some of the things that are happening? Should I talk to my child? My child saw this on the news. What do I say? So that led to a really sort of meaningful conversation and meaningful resources that we could support families through, no matter the difficult topic. Paying attention to conversations when we come together as team leads and teaching teams, saying these are the conversations we're having, that often leads us to okay, you're hearing this classroom is, and this, we need to look at what sort of service or offering we can make that would really support families. We look at what resources then are available for families and how we can help them navigate that. So often starting with the family's pediatrician or healthcare provider, and really advocating that they have a close relationship with them, that it's not in and out, that they're seeing the same pediatrician, that pediatrician is listening to them. So sometimes when we've had a child with a health concern, myself or somebody in our program will really write those concerns out so that when the family goes, they can list them and get the treatment that they need and not be, sort of ushered out the door with maybe they have stomach problems because you're giving them too much juice. But that they're really listening and following through with the appropriate health care as needed. That families can really feel empowered to be that important voice in their child's medical care. There are great resources out there too. If you're feeling like I'm not an expert in infant development, I really don't know that much about kindergarten transition. There are really great resources out there. So sometimes a website is really accessible and is a resource a family wants to use. Other times we've walked through the information with them, but these are some of them. Celebrate One is a Columbus local sort of organization, really, that infant mortality, infant and prenatal care. Ohio's Bold Beginning has so much on it. Early childhood programs, services for families, communities, and children. I really encourage that as a resource that you can provide families or look at to see what your school could have on site too. In the family school district of residence, once the child is 3, they're going to be coming to that district eventually. So of course the district wants them to have all the resources they can prior to them starting kindergarten or pre-K with them. So really look at that district and what they have. And we talked about not only that families might need support in navigating these, getting the call back, making sure that they're being seen for a full appointment and their issue is addressed, but sometimes coaching too. So if they were given advice on nutrition or what their child needs to eat, sometimes we've heard, oh, I tried it, but it didn't work. And we know from our work in the classroom, when we implement a behavior plan or an intervention, that you need to do it several times. So being that coach and the person in the corner and that resource to bounce off of, like, well, I tried this, but this happened. Okay, so that didn't work for you. How can we make adjustments in your household so that support in getting your child's bedtime routine can really be followed through on? We have really been creative here with resources. Again, birth to 5 isn't necessarily funded the way that a lot of what the presenters today are talking about in terms of school district taxpayer funding and the funding that comes along with being a part of any school district or the requirements of a school district. So a lot of times it is refer the family. And I've talked a lot about when you refer a family, making sure that the cliff effect doesn't happen, that just referring a family could be a ticket to nowhere. So we have found from our data the kind of resources and supports that we most often saw families needing, that we had experienced sort of that cliff effect, or families had come back and shared negative experiences. So at our site, I use a grant, or we do, certainly many people support this grant, to provide SLP services. So I've contracted with a speech language pathologist through our Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant, because speech and language intervention, if literacy is Ohio's focus, language and literacy is the focus of early childhood, and we can make great strides before 5 and before that child starts kindergarten if there's a developmental concern or a delay that we identify early on. And just telling a parent, we've identified this delay, go get speech therapy, isn't really supportive of that family necessarily. We recognize the barriers that are inherent in that. So we have invested in a speech language pathologist here. We also have partnerships within our university. So those are those bi-directional partnerships for couples and family therapy, graduate student in our program, school psychology graduate students, and social work graduate students, because those are the areas where the teachers are teachers and they are full-time with 18 or 10 or 8 children. And to be that person that we want to be, that when a family says, I'm sorry I'm late every day, but I'm staying up north now with my sister because I got evicted, we need to address that problem to ensure continuity of education for that child. So to have a social work intern that the teacher can say, that sounds so frustrating. Let me make sure that you have talked to Miss Chloe over here, make that graceful handoff, and make sure that we're converging on the resources and support that we're providing to families. And then the importance of communication. I think all of us know that we're having productive discussions and that we're having them at the right time. It's not the right time if you're serving breakfast and you're an early childhood educator and a family comes in and says something about something piqued their interest. I'll tell you a common thing. A grandma said, she's not talking right. What are you going to do about this? And so that's in mom's mind. And she comes in and it's breakfast time and says, yeah, what are you doing about this? Because she's not talking like my other children and I want her to. We need to do something. That's probably not going to be the most productive conversation at breakfast on a Tuesday at 8:30, but that teacher taking the time to be like, okay, you're concerned about her language. We have screenings going on right now. Let me get back to you. What's a good time? And I'll make sure either them, the speech language pathologist, perhaps somebody on administration gets back to address that parent's need. So again, the educators don't feel that they have to be everything to everyone right when it comes to them, but that we can take a minute, take a breath, and really make sure we're responding in an appropriate and effective way. We know the children best in our settings, acknowledging that difference, that home is really different than school, and school can be different from home. Certainly welcoming and accessible to many diverse families. What I mean by is we don't have a TV in our classroom. We don't have a bed in our classroom. There are just some differences like that. With my own child, if they needed a break, I would put them in their bedroom and I could walk away. We can't do that here. So acknowledging that maybe something like a timeout or planned ignoring is very effective in the home setting, but might not be possible here. How can we meet somewhere in the middle? So that those differences aren't bad, that the child is always going to encounter, that being a part of a school community, being a part of a learning community, being a part of a work community isn't going to be like your household setting, but where are the commonalities and what can we find to really grow and expand on. So I'm excited to hear some of the ways that you have engaged with families in your program, or happy to answer more questions about what we do here or discuss that.
Great. Thank you so much, Annalisa. That was such a great, informative presentation. It was wonderful to hear your perspective on family engagement and early childhood education. Like Annalisa said, we have some time for question and answers. So if you could just put your questions in the chat, I'll direct them toward Annalisa. In the meantime, I do have a question. You spoke about the role of early childhood education as a social network, and I was just wondering, how has the internet changed that landscape, if at all? Does social media play a role in that? I can imagine a lot of parents are interacting with each other online to do that learning.
Yeah, right. Social media is a wonderful tool and can be dangerous too, right? Because people tend to post the extremes, right? So there is, a very popular Instagram, reason my kid is crying, which is because, the goldfish crackers are a different color today. So sometimes I think that's a very normalizing sort of like, oh, other kids, like there isn't always a huge reason that your kid is giving you a hard time that day. Sometimes it's just because it's 3, but they are 3 and that's what 3-year-olds do, and they'll do it and then they won't anymore. And you'll miss it someday. But sometimes folks tend to, only post, here is a 3-year-old who is reading. And then that can lead into that, well, my 3-year-old isn't reading. Here is an 18-month-old who can say every dinosaur that ever existed. My child isn't doing that. So it can sort of set the tone for unattainable, just like all of us looking at Instagram pictures, unattainable sort of, or unrealistic expectations. But it can also be a really great place to find local resources in Columbus. I mean, I'm looking right now at where to have a birthday party for a 12-year-old. I haven't had a birthday party in 3 years. We haven't done that. And so, those are the kind of things that social media can be used for. We have a whole part on our website too. A lot of families are concerned about media and their children, and certainly no child does really well being on any screen all of the time. But there are also really good resources on our website about media use in young children in terms of what's appropriate screen time, how to use screens with your kids. So it goes both ways, because there are good resources, not only for adults, but for children out there on the internet.
Sorry, thank you. Question in the chat, do you use STAR at your center?
STAR is Sit Together and Read, and that is a literacy curriculum. And we actually use, and it was developed by faculty here at Ohio State, Laura Justice, who I should say is the executive director over all 3 centers. So, right, the school, the Crane Center for Early Childhood Research and Policy, and Schoenbaum Family Center Community Programs. And Laura also developed Read It Again. And we actually use Read It Again in our classrooms. And we also developed the infant toddler component to that. So that way we have a continuum of birth to age 5 of language and literacy supplemental curriculum. So we're really familiar with STAR, but we use Read It Again in our program. And then we use the Read It Again techniques, which are the same as STAR, right? Good reading is good reading with young children. And in our shared story times with families, so once a week, we have a shared story time in our library with snacks. And it's right when you walk out the door. So there's a little peer pressure for children to attend with their parents. And then certainly we model those strategies of high quality language and literacy reading and interactions with children in those story times. So it's active, it's engaging, and it's not necessarily an explicit point to print when you read with your child, but you're seeing how it is done and how engaging it is for children, and that those kind of tactics can be used in your own home.
Thank you. Another question that I had, you mentioned that ticket to nowhere, where families sometimes aren't able to use the resources that they were referred to, and they sometimes come back with a negative experience. So what kind of negative experiences are common for families, and do you have any ideas for how to solve those problems, either short-term, how you're dealing with them, or long-term?
Yeah, I'd say the most common is we're very fortunate in Central Ohio to have a really robust children's hospital, has a lot of services available, but there can be waits of up to 9 months. And if your child, that can be a fourth of your child's life at that point. And we talk about early intervention, and sometimes there's a delay in receiving those services, even through a local school district, making an appointment for an ETR and then getting a full evaluation and, an assessment, then an evaluation, and then coming back, right? You got 30 days, 60 days, 30 days again. That can be a significant part of a child's life, and could not be seem like anything's going somewhere, right? So I did all this work, I got my child there, I got this appointment, and now I'm waiting another 30 days until they have the next meeting. So that can be discouraging to parents. And so what we do here is certainly a referral to a school district that might take several months. We will start implementing strategies here that we know are best practices. So if it's a behavioral concern, if it's a language and literacy delay, gross motor delay, start doing techniques. Here's what we're going to do here, mom and dad. Here's what you can do at home. So that we're always arriving with a plan, not just that we're just waiting around. Similarly, if you're experiencing trauma or experiencing the trauma of living in poverty, sometimes then something might not rise to the level of urgency that a school might think it is, right? So a child arriving every day at 11 is of a concern to us. But if you're living in a different household because you had to get away from a violent situation, your child being to school at 8:30 isn't going to be the most important thing on their list right then. So acknowledging that, controlling what we can control here in the school. So they're missing this part of the day. We're going to infuse it into this part to make sure that they're not missing the Read It Again curriculum, that they're not missing the time with the speech language pathologist. And we're going to continue talking with the family about how to get back into the routine of coming a little bit earlier and a little bit earlier. Also, as we look forward into going into elementary school, wanting to establish those good habits and routines about consistency and getting to school every day. So I would say making an appointment and waiting for several months is the most common sort of frustration that when a parent feels something is important enough to make an appointment, waiting then 9 months can be a very disheartening thing. And so what can we do in the interim to show that family that it was a valid concern, they did the right thing, and we're going to support them until they get those additional resources.
Great, thank you. Looks like no more questions in the chat, and I think it is just about time to wrap up. So let's all thank Annalisa for presenting today. You can join me in thanking her in the chat too. Let me pull up.
Yeah. Thank you all. I know everybody is ready for some lunch and to get ready. I'm excited for the afternoon sessions.
So we will have about a half-hour break for lunch, and then you can rejoin us at noon. There's no registration needed for that session. If you would also please fill out the survey that I dropped in the chat just once. Please don't fill out that survey more than once. So if this is last session that you'll be attending today, fill out that survey. If not, wait until later. And with that, once again, thank you so much, Annalisa, and we'll see you soon at another session.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everybody.